Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. We're here today with an absolute double threat, a man who has mastered both business and baking. Welcome, Andrew Auld.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ian.
That's great. We've known each other for a long while, but it's really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk on our podcast.
No, you're very welcome.
So we're sat here in the not so sunny village of Cryche in the middle of Derbyshire. For those who won't know where we're filming. So Andrew, obviously you've been in the village for a while. So let's investigate how you got here and what went on. Just start by telling us what you do now.
Okay, so now I am the commercial director in a smallish software company. We support library software, so software for various different types of libraries, public libraries, academic libraries, government libraries, all sorts. And I got there because the company's part owned by a longtime friend of mine, and the business I was previously in, which you're alluding to, the bakery business, as we were coming to the point of selling that business, an opportunity opened up at PTFS Europe for me to join that company and join my friend there. And so I decided I would do that. Right. And that's what I'm doing now. So I sort of run. I kind of my experience to date in my career has been really in commercial sides of organisations, running the business really, and I've taken that skill set to what I'm doing now. So very different from baking, but nonetheless something I feel I can at least contribute to.
So tell me the route. So how did you end up with the loaf bakery as it was when you owned it? How did your career lead to that? Where did it all start?
Okay, so there's a long story which I'll try to précis. Yeah. But essentially, so going way back, I was brought up on a farm in Cumbria, and the farm produced food. And so we produced pork, we produced beef, we produced milk. And my mother and father were both involved in businesses, the farm business, but my mum had 2 butcher shops as well, selling the meat from the business. And one of my earliest jobs was, in the holidays would be helping out in the butchers. So, and on the farm, we all of us worked on the farm. So I was involved from a very early stage in my life in producing food. And food and where food comes from and how it's made has always been something that's been important and interesting to me. Yeah. I enjoy cooking. Winding forward a little bit, my academic qualifications from university were in languages. So I spent time in France and Germany as part of that. And they have fantastic bread cultures. And I really got interested in the bread both in Germany and in France when I was there. So that was kind of being banked away, if you like, in the little sort of store of experiences and knowledge sets. And again, winding forward a little bit, I then had from university a sort of very commercial, typical milk round university type career, as in
I remember the milk round.
Yeah, I joined a company called BOC, which is an industrial gases company.
Yes.
On the sales and marketing stream. So doing that, and I was there for 9 years, doing that, working through various sales, marketing and business product management or project management jobs. I sort of honed my commercial acumen. Yeah. And then it was really, there was another job after that, which was in publishing. So again, commercial, but again, a little bit more back to my communications side of things. And coming out of that, we were moving from the southeast of England up to Derbyshire. And both of us at the time, my now husband and I, Roger, both of us at the time wanted to look at the idea of running our own business. And I guess from having come from an upbringing where my parents were self-employed, ran their own businesses, I felt always that it would be a natural thing for me to eventually be a business run a business. That's kind of where my mindset came from.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, it was natural to me that I would want to do that. And then the interest in food, all of that stuff about bread baking and French bread, German bread, that all sort of coalesced into the idea of a bakery. Wouldn't it be great to have a bakery? Roger was very interested in running a cafe.
Right.
So we brought those concepts together, and when the bakery in Christchurch, as it was at the time, Allsops, closed, it was, well, now or never. We either look at this seriously in the place where we live, or we'll forget the idea altogether and, carry on with other things.
So you leapt.
So we leapt, yeah. And so that was how we kind of eventually managed to get into the idea of running a bakery business. But it was not a sort of training or anything like that we went through.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because so going back, to the farm, the fact that the food and food chain and where food comes from was around you. That do you really think that just kind of registered, and that was, and then the travel with the bread? Was there always that thread of enjoyment of food or awareness of food?
Yeah, always. I mean, my family and then Roger's also interested in this. We place a very high value on food and where making good food, eating good food. We're not we wouldn't call ourselves foodies. We don't sort of seek out particularly amazing restaurants to go to and experience, Michelin starred restaurants or anything like that. We're not foodies in that way, but we're very interested in eating good food. So food that's been created from scratch, food that's made from ingredients where we know where they've come from. Roger's vegetarian, so we live mostly vegetarian at home. So we're always interested in getting flavour out of food, because cooking a vegetarian diet it's a bit more tricky sometimes to develop flavour in a dish, and so we think about that. And then my whole family is the same, so we all love food. One of the things I said, we got married earlier this summer, and for the wedding, when I was talking to the caterer, it was one of the things that I said was, well, the Auld family's coming, the Bode family's coming, the Germans, we've got lots of German friends, as I said earlier. I spent a lot of time in Germany. The Germans are coming, so there needs to be enough food. We're all big eaters, and so the quality of food and where it's come from is really important. And that has been a thread in my thinking, and that was certainly a massive focus at the loaf at the bakery, was only using ingredients from scratch, making everything in-house, not buying any pre-made things in. The bread, all of the bread was completely additive free, so it was all about taking the most pure and raw ingredients and turning them into something delicious.
And I think when you have that kind of approach, there's passion comes with that, isn't there? It's more than just we've got to make some bread. You're almost making it with, there's feeling behind it, isn't there? There's a whole thread there of what's important about this. It's more than just the food, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And that was definitely something we wanted to achieve with the loaf as well, was to not just be a bakery that produced bread, but be a place in the community that people felt there was something wholesome about it. And that wholesomeness came not just from the ingredients that we used to make the food that we produced, but from the way that people felt when they were in the shop, the way people felt when they sat in the cafe, the way that the staff, hopefully we supported the staff to be able to deliver the service that they gave to the customers. So all of that sort of wrapped up into a sort of a warm hug, if you like. So we were very focused on being that kind of a business rather than just being a business that produced bread and sold it.
It's interesting. I mean, my experience, with the loaf, always was that it was the place where it was a hub. I mean, you mentioned the word hub, but you'd go and meet people there, even when you went in. So there's something about food and the sharing of food, isn't there? It's making something where people can sit and enjoy what they're eating, but the conversation and the atmosphere, it's really important, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's definitely important in the way my family enjoys food. So the wider family. So food is always important when we come together as a family. We have big meals together. My mum, who's now in her late 70s, she will still produce if she'll invite loads of people around and then produce masses of food for everybody, and we all do the same as children.
Let's just stick for a moment with the bread making thing, though. So making bread, there's passion about. You've spoken about the importance of using ingredients that are where they've come from, and it's making something. There's something about making from very basic ingredients something which is enjoyable and flavoursome. So how does that work with having all that passion about the bread and making the business a successful business? Is there ever a tension there, or is there ever a frustration that I just want to get on and make bread?
So I think for businesses to be successful, they have to a certain degree, be profitable. And so it's all very well saying you're going to use the very best of ingredients and you're going to know where everything comes from. And you might want to use organic ingredients. For example, we weren't an organic bakery. We baked some organic products, but not exclusively. But then you still got to be able to achieve the sales at a price point that you're going to be able to keep being able to pay your staff.
Yes.
So, you need to be profitable as a business. So yes, it's partly by focusing on good quality ingredients that people want to buy your products in the first place and they come back, and therefore you can make a successful business of it. But you must keep, and we learned this a lot as we went along, that when you're pricing products, you can't just do it on the basis of, well, X costs this, so we have to price at Y. You have to also consider what you can expect customers to pay for something. And that might mean you have to, in some ways, make some compromises about where you source ingredients or exactly what you use, whether you go. So we toyed with going exclusively organic, but the cost of organic flour was so much greater than conventional flour, and the price points that we were trying to that we were getting sort of feedback from the village, from our most regular customers, we wouldn't have been able to sustain those price points. Nor was organic a big enough trigger for people to want to pay a higher price for. So we didn't go fully down that road for that reason. So it is always going to be that you have to you have to tailor what you're doing to a degree in order to keep the business successful. You might necessarily then have to compromise on some of your most enlivened passions.
Do you still make your own bread?
When I've got time, which isn't that often. So we still get our bread from the loaf mostly, right, yeah. which is great. Yeah. But I do like to make bread, and I love the fact that I taught while I was running the loaf. I taught many people to bake bread, and one of the people I taught was my father, and he absolutely, since coming on. Well, he's been on 2 of my courses. Since coming on my courses, they haven't bought any bread at home. So he bakes all of their bread. And so one thing that I do love is going up home and to my mum and dad's and eating dad's bread.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
Because the course, I mean, it was a very, very highly sort of praised course, your bread making course. Was that ever an option to go that way and teach that rather than make it?
Well, I mean, I ran actually 5 different courses, so and they were all extremely popular, and so I could almost have seen myself setting up a bit of a bakery school with a bit of a curriculum of different types of courses to offer. And if I think back to when I did languages at university, I even toyed at that time with doing a PGCE following my my languages degree and going down the teaching route. And so teaching things has been something that I've flirted with over the years and obviously done a lot of as in bread baking context. But I think there are two things that probably prevent me from doing that. One is that I do get what's the word? Not impatient, but I do get itchy feet, I think, around what I'm doing, and I like to change. And so to teach the same thing over and over, once I'd done, I don't know how many years we did the bread baking courses, I'm going to say 8 or 9 years I did the same courses. And once I'd done them however many 100 times, I was loving them still, but I wouldn't want to do that forever.
Yeah.
And then the other factor is, in terms of teaching, is that I'm not terribly patient with children and young people. So that's very honest. But I'm not sure I could manage a class of young people in a teaching. Yeah. So if I were to teach language,
and it's important to be self-aware, isn't it? Because you don't want to try and do something which really is very unpleasant.
Yeah.
There's part of this is about following a passion, isn't it? Following a passion and following what excites you, what motivates you. So how did it come to, what was that that you kind of got to the end of the road with the baking? What led you to sort of say, let's go try something else now?
So one thing was that we felt that we were really reaching the end of what we'd set out to achieve with the loaf. So we did all good entrepreneurs, I guess, we wrote a business plan before we started the loaf, and we did look at the business plan again and check where we were going with it. And it was a 5-year plan when we first started, and within about 6 years we'd done what we'd set out to do. And though we were still growing the business at the time, so this was sort of 10 years in when we took the decision to sell, we had probably started to feel that we'd done what we wanted to achieve with that phase of our lives, and it was time to pass that to somebody else to do other things with. So that was a factor, and mentioned
it's very time consuming, isn't it? I mean, bread making is a bakery is no mean feat in terms of hours, is it?
Yeah, and so that kind of plays to the other major reason, which is that it was a very tough business to run, and as a couple, it took its toll on our home lives and how much time we had available. I worked typically overnight most nights, so we baked. The business was open 7 days a week in some way, and we baked 6 nights a week, and we started at 11 p.m. for the following day on a Friday night. I would always start at 8:30 in the evening on a Friday. So I always remember walking up into the village, and the Black Swan, there'd be people sat outside in the summer, sat outside having their Friday evening drinks, and I'd be going for a night in the bakery. And it really didn't, year after year, that starts to be something that you think,
that's a test.
Yes,
isn't it?
It's a test.
That's a test.
So I think there was a strong degree of we've reached the limit of what we're prepared to do, and we're healthy people. We like to be healthy people, and there's a lot of information out there about how working shifts, working nights is not great for your health, and I don't think I was living a particularly healthy lifestyle, and it was taking its toll. So I wasn't able to, do as much running, cycling, those things as I liked, and all of that. You just start to think, well, it's time to do something different again.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you are, as you are, someone who's quite driven and very community focused as well. Because I know that okay, so you sell the loaf, but I mean, I know you run, you cycle. You're involved with the Glebe Field Centre in Christchurch. You, until very recently, a lot of time goes into the local magazine. I mean, the list of stuff. I mean, how on earth does someone find the time to do all that?
I think that was another factor, to be honest, in the change from the loaf to what I do now. was that I've always been somebody. This again comes back to my upbringing and what my family does. We're all people who are community focused, and the loaf was something, the bakery was something, as I mentioned earlier, was something that we wanted to be more than just a bakery in the community. So we wanted it to provide something for the community that was a place to meet, as you said, and a place to feel that the community was drawn together in some way. But to be able to do other stuff in the community, you do need time, and we didn't have the time, or as much time. So my current role, I officially work 4 days a week. Right. And one of the reasons for saying that was going to be what I would do was so that I could at least have one nominal work day free to focus on work in the community. And that's allowed me time to get involved at the Glebe, to carry on until recently with the magazine, as you mentioned. I'm on another trustee of another charity as well. So all of this has enabled me to do those kind of activities, and that comes from my family's focus on that. My mum and dad have always been parish councillors or involved in local government or community work of some kind or other.
So do you think that was always in the blueprint, having been brought up that way, sort of around food, around that kind of engagement? Do you think, was that the seed that was sowed that meant you were never going to be a career professional at BOC? You were always going to do something yourself?
Although I enjoyed the time at BOC, a big industrial company, and I had a great career, and I was being offered a international role when I left. I was doing an international role when I left and being offered a bigger one. But that sort of career path, just from my perspective and from my outlook at the time, just leads to lots of airports, lots of hotels, lots of not being able to do. At the time I was rowing, so I rowed at university, and I rowed down in Walton on Thames. And at the time I left BOC, I was one of the reasons for leaving was that I wasn't finding time to go regularly rowing on the river because I was away X weeks at a time, and the sort of destination for that is and this is a very big stereotype coming, but is the slightly overweight businessman who spends a lot of time in hotels, and I'm someone who likes my exercise, who likes to be fit and healthy, and I just didn't want to go down that track. So that was one thing, and then the other thing is, as you say, coming from my upbringing, the whole idea that standing on my own 2 feet and being in control of my own destiny by running my own business or businesses was where I really would feel most at home, I suppose.
Do you think you've always had a sense of what's important to you?
Like to think I have, yeah, and I think that has come from family. So we're a very close family, and my mother and father brought us all up to have a sort of moral compass, if you like, that's based on a mixture of Christian values, community values, business ethic values. So all of those things coming into play, but they're not dictating that we behave in a certain way, but it's just the way that we've sort of experienced our lives and then continue to experience our family relationships. So we just all, I think, have a similar outlook in terms of how we see life and what we see as important in life.
It feels like that what that leads to, and I can certainly relate to a lot of that. The wanting to be doing something on your terms. I wonder, do you think a lot of people today would find it very easy to almost stumble through life if they're not clear on what's important to them? They suddenly find themselves as that person who's had the sort of 30, 40-year corporate career and then suddenly realises, I've run out of time.
I think maybe that's true. Yeah. I think I do think I've been lucky. So I don't think it's all about not necessarily being pointed in the right direction from the start, which I do think we were. But as I say, we weren't pushed.
Yeah.
We've followed our own our own courses, reached our own destinations. And I do think luck comes into play. So or do you make your own luck? I don't know.
That's interesting, isn't it? Is it? I mean, when we say luck, is that? I wonder, how does that manifest itself? I mean, you say, an opportunity came your way, so the bakery was up for sale. Now, you could call that luck, or it's is it just that you make luck out of it?
I think you do that. I think that's what you do. I think another example of that in our sort of, in my past and my career and our sort of decisions, when we chose to move from the London area to Derbyshire, it was by complete chance that Rog spotted an advert in the paper for a job in Derby City Council that kind of fit my skill set. Right. I wasn't looking in particular, and he just happened to see it and said, "Well, why don't you apply for that?" And I suppose I could have said no. No, that's not really why. Local government, I had no experience in local government. But I thought, well, why not? I can apply. I can hone my skill set to fit that job application. And so I got the job. So, was it lucky that he saw that? Maybe. But did I then apply myself and get the job? Yes. So, like you say, was it lucky that the bakery in the village closed at the time we might have thought about doing a business? Yes, I guess. Could we have ignored that? Yes, we could. So we then made our own luck, as you say.
On a previous guest talking to, we used a term that surfaced in the conversation, which was living life intentionally. And that almost feels like that, doesn't it? It's rather than you let these things kind of go by and, it's not me, it's jumping on it and making a decision to grab something as it goes past.
I think that's really important, and I think for small businesses that's really important, because one of the things that was really clear was that Roger and I needed to have a change from the loaf. We could have ignored that need, and we could have carried on running a business that may not have then done so well. It may have gone into decline. Or we just may have, become ill and unable to support the business as well. Yeah. So I think it's very important to actually take stock of what you're doing and then take positive decisions about where you've reached, because we definitely took a positive decision to sell the business.
Yes.
And then took steps to achieve that. And that's definitely important when you're, certainly when you're in control of a small business, you need to be in control of what the outs are and where you're going with it.
Yeah, rather than being dictated to.
Rather than the business then getting out of control and taking over your sort of trajectory.
So all the other things that you're involved with, and there are many, what do you think drives you to keep doing that and getting involved? And I mean things like, local organisations, but also, maintaining your outdoor and activity. What do you think drives you to get involved in all those different things?
I don't like to give up on anything. And so, and I am competitive. So in terms of my physical activity, I have a competitive streak that means that I'm a happy Strava user. So I like the fact that it goads you into trying to be the king of the mountains and things like that. That suits my temperament. In terms of the community stuff, I think what drives me there is that I've got something to offer, so why wouldn't I offer that? If there's nobody else going to do that particular thing, then, and I've got the skills and I've got at least a little bit of time, then why don't I get on and offer those skills? Because if nobody else is there, the job's got to be done. I might as well do it.
Yeah.
So, just thinking back a little bit I was involved in the magazine, the community magazine, for 15 years or 16 years or something. And it reached a point where it was changing from one form to another form. The previous set of people who'd been involved for a long time wanted to disengage, quite understandably. And there was a choice that I had to make there about whether I do something about that and help it to continue, or I could have also said I'm going to, back out at this point.
Yeah.
But I had the skill set, and so I thought, well, nobody else at the moment is stepping forward. I better get on and deal with this, because otherwise we lose something in this community.
Yeah.
So I do. That's just how my mind works.
Yeah.
And the same really was true of the Glebe. It's a community organisation that's absolutely reliant on the Voluntary Trustees Management Committee, and a real decisive point in its history was reached prior to, but then during COVID, when the number of people involved was declining. They've been involved for many, many years, so possibly without wanting to criticise anything that had gone before, it's difficult to come up with new ideas and keep a place, reinventing itself and relevant. And it was clear to a few of us in the community that more people needed to be helping there, because otherwise the place maybe wasn't going to do so well. Right. And again, it was, well, who else is coming forward? Some of us came forward, and I was one of them. So, that's kind of how that kind of thing comes about for me.
So you mentioned that with the bakery, you and Roger had a business plan, and you knew what was you had achieved. So now you've left that and you're doing other stuff. Where's this heading? What's Andrew's plan?
I'm not sure I know. And that's probably quite honest, to be honest. I'm really enjoying the business that I'm involved with now. It's very committing. I do quite a lot of travel, and I'm fighting the ultimate becoming the overweight businessman sat in airports. But I'm enjoying that at the moment.
Yep.
Have I ever had a plan when I've gone through each of these changes? Because I've kind of had a pretty varied career. People can never really understand how I've gone from industry to publishing to local government to running a bakery and now to working in software. And my sort of answer when people ask me, where's the thread, where's the career path, is, well, for me, it's not about kind of a long continuous thread. It's about doing something that challenges me. Each change has challenged me. I've had to learn new things. I've had to switch contexts completely. And I think that's the thread. So the thread in my career is to put myself into situations that I find challenging and where I can continue to learn something. Yeah. And I think, therefore, to answer your question, what's next? What's the end point? I don't know.
To keep on having fun.
Keep on being challenged. Keep on stretching myself. Keep on learning new things.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting. A friend of mine and early guest on the podcast would describe how we would speak to young people, young graduates especially, and that they'd show him this career plan that they had. And I know he'd say, well, tear that up, because it's never going to happen like that.
I remember way back at school, the careers questionnaires that you do. And I filled in this questionnaire, and it pops out with what your ideal career is. And it popped out with prison warden for me. And that was such a something I didn't want to be.
But you've just triggered. Mine was estate agent.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I suppose the one place I know I won't end up, hopefully, is prison, but also is never a prison warden.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, we could keep on talking, but I have a final question for you, and that's this. if we could conquer time travel, so let's make that assumption now, and you could travel back in time to leave a letter for the younger Andrew, what would you write in that letter, knowing what you know now?
I think I'd probably tell myself that some of the personal challenges that I'd face are surmountable, and that things won't be as bad as I think they'll be in that respect. From a career point of view, I don't think I'd give myself much advice at all. I think I'd probably just say, make sure you just keep challenging yourself, because I know that's what you want to do.
Brilliant. Andrew, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having the discussion with you this time. So
you're very welcome.
You have been listening to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers and our guest this time, Andrew Auld. If you've enjoyed the conversation, please like and subscribe. If you would like to listen to some of our other conversations, please do check us out on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. So thanks for listening. See you next time.